Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. Week 9 of DraftKings is just around the corner on Sunday, 2 days away. I'm going to take questions from my Twitch chat, and they're going to ask me things that they want to know, whether it's strategy, game selection, bankroll management. We try to keep the 1v1s and 2v2s for the Sunday morning show when we have a little bit more information, right? We don't want to make our lineup decisions on Friday, but we want to have the ideas in place for what we want to do, our if-then statements, if you will. Ranges, price ranges, players in that range, volume questions, things like that. We go over this every single week. You guys know you've been here for 9 straight weeks on YouTube and hopefully back from last season as well. If you're new to the channel, welcome here. I appreciate that you guys clicked on that thumbnail and found your way to my channel. I'm Al, if you don't know already, and we do a ton of content on this channel. So if you would be so kind, guys, I got a special giveaway for you. If you click like on this video, you get 1,000 free internet points. That's all you got to do. You click like, you get 1,000 free internet points. They'll be distributed to you by Mark Zuckerberg or, you know, somebody, who knows. But please drop a like on this video. Let's see if we can get over 1,000 before kickoff on Sunday. Subscribe to the channel and ring that notifications bell so you get notified anytime I publish new content on this channel, whether it's NFL, NBA, or whatever strategy, how to win videos. Whatever you're looking for in terms of daily fantasy on DraftKings, I've got it for you here. Let's get right to some questions from the chat. They're all spamming my little smile. You guys are a mess. Turkey stuffing, yams, mashed potatoes with gravy. Yes, and better than all the turkey stuffing, because, you know, Halloween's gone, so it's Thanksgiving season at this point. I mean, the best part about Thanksgiving is the leftover sandwich the next day, right? Gravy soaked leftover sandwich. Talk you into or out of playing Howard for cash? Okay, so running back, essentially. I think you're paying up for 1, if not 2 running backs on top of the list. I think that this is a team jam 'em in week. I think that we are definitely paying up at running back, whether it's McCaffrey or Dalvin Cook, up to you. And I think you're getting somebody in this 7K range, whether it's going to be Aaron Jones or Nick Chubb or Le'Veon Bell or Josh Jacobs, whoever you're looking for in this range, 6,500 to 8,000. I think that's the secondary running back. I think the third running back is somebody down here, starting with Henry at 5,700. I think he's in play going up against Carolina, who's been pretty good against opposing running backs, but he is not your prototypical DraftKings back, really only getting 1 to 3 targets a week with a season high of 3 that he achieved twice, once against Denver and once 2 months ago in week 2 against Indy. You need all the production on the ground for Derrick Henry. Yes, he can catch a pass, but it's usually a designed screen, and it's not something they go to a lot. So he's got to get into the end zone, and he's got to run the ball a ton. Another guy just like him is Jordan Howard. In the case that Miles Sanders is out, he's had 23 touches last week against Buffalo, and has scored some touchdowns this year with 6 on the year. So there is upside here at 5,100. I think that he's more of a tournament play, just like Henry, I feel, is more of a tournament play because of their lower floor, because they're not really involved in the passing game. So that brings me down to guys like this. Freeman, in the case that Lindsey sits this week, becomes an absolute smash against Cleveland at 4,900. As is, he's a pretty good value if Lindsey sits. He returned to full practice on Thursday, so it looks like he's going to play. But if, you know, in the case that something happens and he sits, then I like him a little bit more. Mark Walton has enough volume to pay off at 4,500. Considering that Drake is gone, he should get 15 touches. He's not that great of an athlete at the position comparatively to other great athletes in the NFL at the position. But I'm not against him. I definitely think he can get there against the Jets, who have struggled a lot. But the number 1 play at the position, and we're going on the case that Jaylen Samuels is going to be the starter, assuming that James Conner is out. Conner has missed practice all week long with this shoulder injury. Samuels has gotten all the first team reps. Benny Snell is hurt as well. Jaylen Samuels, great pass catching back. Absolutely outstanding pass catching back. So you have that pass catching floor. He's only 4K on DraftKings, and I think that he is going to be the most owned running back on the entire slate if Conner is out, and currently he's a game time decision. But usually when players don't practice on Friday, they're typically out on Sunday. So this is where we're going. And if Conner is in, if Conner is active and Conner is fine and expected to play, you know, he's active and not active, then we can easily pivot off of this to one of those other guys that's slightly higher priced. But right now, Jaylen Samuels looks like he's going to be the chalk with two of the other high priced running backs. Hilton looking doubtful. Is there any pass catchers I like on Indy? If Hilton's out, then maybe somebody like Pascal, maybe some, like they're all kind of meh, to be honest.
2 + 2 is 4 - 1, that's 3. Quick maths.
Jace, thank you very much for the 5 months. Appreciate that. Donkey Venom, you said, is concentrating too hard on correlations and stacks somewhat of a chalk build style worth steering away from regardless of the upside of said stacks? Yes and no. I mean, there's times that you can break the rules, but typically speaking, the stack is going to be the right way to go. Since I wasn't on yesterday, should we jam in Reese's and Milky Way? My kid brought home a contrarian Milky Way yesterday when trick-or-treating. It was a marshmallow Milky Way, or midnight marshmallow Milky Way. It's essentially a Scotch mallow. It's dark chocolate with caramel and marshmallow, and it was vanglorious. It was amazing. One of my new favorite candies. I didn't even know this existed in a Milky Way bar. It was great. Is playing Phillip Rivers too much for cash, or is playing Phillip Rivers for cash too much of a risk? I like to focus on quarterbacks in higher totaled games. He's extremely cheap going against Green Bay, but you usually attack Green Bay on the ground. You can hit them through the air. I think that Derek Carr at 5,500 might be a little bit of a better play. I think Trubisky, as ugly as he's been at 5K, has a softer matchup against Philly. A kid came to your door dressed as Smiz. You're lying. I don't believe you. Can we talk about running backs, not McCaffrey or Cooks? Any interest in Chubbs? Yes, I just talked about them. I think that they're the secondary guy. I think your RB1 is going to be, most RB1s that you see are going to be either McCaffrey or Cook. I think that the RB2 in most lineups that you're going to see is going to come from that 6,500 to 8,000 range. Any wide receivers worth paying up for in cash? Yeah. I think that somebody like Godwin, somebody like Tyler Lockett, and Allen Robinson, I think those guys are fine if you want to pay for them. Is Josh Jacobs too cute? If he's healthy, I do not believe that he is too cute at all. Detroit's been very, very bad against the run. The Oakland Raiders are determined to give this kid the ball a lot. We have seen a lot more usage in the passing game. Now, is this like Le'Veon Bell? Is this David Johnson? Is this Saquon Barkley or Christian McCaffrey usage? No, but it's also not Derrick Henry usage. At least you're getting a few catches, right? With 10 targets over the last 4 games, as opposed to like 5 targets over the last 4 games. That's a little bit better. And you're going to get them with the ball on the ground against a team that has been, very honest, poor against stopping running backs on the ground. They're allowing a ton of yards. So I think that you get a pretty good floor for Jacobs at 6,500 if that's the route that you want to go. I don't think that that's too cute. I think he's fine. Is it worth squeezing McCaffrey, Cook, and Chubb in cash? Not if Samuels is available. If Samuels is a thing, and right now I'm operating under the assumption that Jaylen Samuels is a thing this Sunday, then no, I'm not going to be playing the 3 of those running backs. I'll be playing 2 of them. But I think if you want to play that trio in tournaments, I think that's very viable. But that's it. RIP Mark Walton, love Jaylen Samuels. And we said that on Monday, right? Or sorry, it wasn't Monday. It was Tuesday because that game happened Monday night, right? I forget now. We said that Connor got injured late in that game. We said, well, if Connor doesn't play, then Jaylen Samuels is going to be my guy. But as we sat earlier in the week, it was Mark Walton. But this is why we pivot. And that's why, like, I talk about this with my Twitch chat all the time, that there's people that watch the first look lineup and just like, oh, I'm plugging that in on Sunday. Don't do that. It's a first look without any research, without any practice reports, without any knowledge or injuries. It's just, these are the matchups that I think are good. Here's some players that I think are underpriced, and this is the direction that we can go. Some of the stuff is still viable by Sunday, but realistically speaking, news changes the entire slate. Do we go back to Jonnu Smith, barring Walker is, or assuming that Walker is out again? I think you can, but like, I think it's thin. I mean, at tight end, here's something that we have in Discord every week, right? We have that tight end chart where you can see who runs routes and who's running routes on the percentage of their quarterbacks dropbacks as opposed to somebody who's blocking on quarterback dropbacks. And Jonnu Smith was blocking a ton. He didn't run that many routes, but when he ran a route this week, he was targeted. So like people are going to game log watch this a little bit and say, oh, 7 targets. So he's now the guy there if Delaney's out. And he may well be, but he ran like 17 routes and was targeted on 7 of them. So that's not really a realistic, sustainable output for a guy running routes on that percentage of his quarterback's dropbacks. So it's more realistic to think that he's going to fall in the 4 or maybe 5 target range moving forward if he still runs that many routes. And I think that there's better value as we come down. So like somebody like Greg Olsen at 3,500, I would probably prefer to Jonnu Smith, even though Jonnu Smith is a much better athlete at this point in their careers than Greg Olsen ever was. Looking at a couple other guys, Dallas Goedert, holding kind of pattern on him a little bit depending on Djax's health and what percentage of the time you think they're going to run. Cam Brate is questionable, but OJ Howard is out. So if you want to run Cam Brate out there for 800 or 700 savings, I'm fine with that. Jack Doyle, 800 savings. He's getting the ball fed to him a little bit more, has a very similar floor and ceiling to Jonnu Smith for 800 less. And Noah Fant, if you want to take the leap of faith that the kid and his athleticism is finally going to shine through, even with the change at quarterback, which to me is a little bit alarming for Denver going from Flacco to Allen. It's a bigger problem, I think, and maybe I'm overestimating because I don't know what Allen is and I do know what Flacco is. As much as people want to pile on Joe Flacco and say how horrible he is, he's an average NFL quarterback who is a veteran and can get things done. Last week was an abomination based on the play calling, in my opinion. I think that it was horrible. They were way too conservative. He was right to kind of go after the coaching staff for being as conservative as they were being. So to me, that's the situation. To me, they're just, it's too much, you know? It's just too much going against Noah Fant and those receivers that maybe they snap back and maybe they take shots with the other kid. But we'll see. Brissett at QB, I don't know that you have to, but you can try and talk me into it. I'm willing to listen. I mean, they tend to run the ball a lot more when they're on the road than they do at home, especially on first and second down. They play more conservative and try and slow it down. They're not a fast-paced team to begin with at all. Samuels and Juju and Cash. Samuels is a slam dunk, yes. Juju, I don't know. I think you're going to be looking more to the 4K wide receivers for your cash game builds. In tournaments, you can do anything, right? I've said that 1,000 times. In tournaments, you can break every rule. There's correlation things that will set you up to have more consistent success or to have higher scoring lineups consistently in tournaments. But realistically, would you rather have an average tournament score of 170 or 150? It's not about your average score in tournaments. It's about what your highest score is on a week, unless you're heavily correlating all of the lineups that you build, right? That's what's more important to me. So like if you're somebody who's really only playing like 2 quarterbacks and you're playing like 70% of a few running backs and playing a bunch of game stacks and then cycling players around that one particular or 2 particular games that you're playing, I could see it through that lens. But realistically speaking, you're not doing that and you're trying to take as many shots at the top as you can. So I don't think you have to do anything. You just have to score more points than everybody else. And I know that's simplistic and I'm sure that team math hates that, but like, as long as you can rationalize what you're doing and why you're doing it, I think that it's a fair play for tournaments. If that is a better way of explaining that. Thoughts on the Detroit wide receivers this week? MJJ pretty cheap in what seems like a great spot. Yeah, and everybody's going to go for him because they're going to come off of Golladay, who's priced up way too high against Oakland, who can't do anything. And I think that they're going to be able to fit him in with the high dollar running backs, being Marvin Jones Jr. I think that people are going to go after Amendola at, what is he, 4,800 or 4,700 because of the amount of targets that he's had. We had this conversation at length on the Daily Fantasy Edge podcast yesterday about Amendola And is he a mirage? Is he dust? Is he a viable wide receiver? And we kind of dug a little bit deeper into it and looked at some different things, and he's definitely going to get the ball, and they're not running the ball as much because they just don't have the personnel to be able to do it. So Marvin Jones Jr. is going to be a guy who we all think, I assume that chat thinks this as well, is going to have heavier ownership this week than last week because Golladay went off and his price went way up, and Marvin Jones Jr.'s price stayed down. So more traffic's going to be on him. So I think that Golladay is a little bit more of a leverage play there with everybody playing the cheaper wide receivers on Detroit this week. Staying away from coin flip wide receiver cores like Tampa Bay and Detroit. I'm not. I think that those are perfect for tournaments. You just need to try and figure out where you think the range for ownership is going to be on those guys and which way you can leverage it and what percentage of the field is going to have that double stack with the quarterback and where can you win. Find out the routes to you winning with those stacks, because it's very easy to make 3 Tampa Bay lineups, one with Evans and Winston, one with Godwin and Winston, and one with Winston and both. Right? Like you can build 3 turns. Like I'm assuming that there's obviously some people that just build 1 lineup or 2 or 3 lineups, right? And you're not going to do that if you're that type of person. But if you build 20 lineups, it's very possible to get those 3 stacks into your allocation of 20 lineups. The same thing goes for Detroit. You just got 3 guys to choose from. You like Russ and both. Russ is an interesting conversation. Deontay Johnson and Jalen Samuels in the same lineup for GPP. Yeah, I'm not against that. They're both going to get a lot of targets, or theoretically should get a lot of targets, and the price is not expensive. Deontay Johnson's in the mid 4K range. Jalen Samuels is absolutely 4K. And that's kind of what I talked about earlier, right? With correlation. But these 2 guys are completely negatively correlated, right? But like that doesn't include salary, guys. The correlation matrix does not take into consideration salary, right? So let's say that Derrick Henry was 4K, right? If Derrick Henry was 4K and his quarterback was 5K, like in a situation like last week where Tannehill was somebody that we were targeting as a value play, but him and Henry are negatively correlated, but Henry's like priced way below where he should be, then I think that those 2 players that are very actually negatively correlated with one another can still play in the same lineup because they can get there on volume at their price. Have we discussed 4 to 5K wide receivers yet? Not in depth, but we can. So the first one, Deshaun Jackson is expected to be backed by Coach Doug Peterson this week, 5,200. So that opens things up a lot for guys like Alshon Jeffrey, who now can't get double teamed. The safeties are going to get pulled way more off the line. Deshaun Jackson helps everything. Just his presence on the field, playing a normal amount of snaps, helps the entire offense. Sammy Watkins at 4,900 should get his 6 to 10 targets. They're going to come closer to the line of scrimmage because of the quarterback situation there. Not as much downfield threat, but a solid floor, but a capped ceiling versus what he has when Mahomes is there. This is still a very good offense, but it's just not the same offense when Mahomes is there. DJ Moore is a value against Tennessee. Tennessee does play slower. Danny Amendola at 4,700 is in play with 19 targets the last 2 weeks. Corey Davis, I'm skipping him. Mike Williams, a lot of volume in the red zone and the end zone, getting targeted downfield a lot. There is a big game waiting for Mike Williams. I don't know if it's coming this week, but there will be one coming soon at some point. I believe he is still in play this week at 4,600. Jarvis Landry's got that questionable tag, limited participant in Thursday practice. We'll see the Friday report, and we'll see what happens on Sunday morning. Denver's defense is very good. Chris Harris should be matched up on Odell Beckham Jr., but their secondary and third cornerbacks are also very good performers as well. But Jarvis Landry being used differently in Cleveland than he used to be in Miami, getting about 10.5 air yards per target versus 6 point whatever when he was in Miami. So same receiver being utilized differently. And with the targets that he's seen, with 31 targets over the past 4 weeks, somebody that I think should be on your radar for 4,500 as a very, very talented wide receiver who's not going to draw the number one cornerback that the other team has. There's a lot in this price range, as you guys can see. I think that Curtis Samuel is also in play for us. Tons of targets for him, no matter who the quarterback is. He's also second on this team in terms of red zone targets and end zone targets, which bodes very well on top of his downfield threat that he brings. You have the 2 Miami receivers, Devontae Parker, who's seen an obscene amount of targets the last 2 weeks with 18 at 4,400. And with Fitz, you know that they're going to try and push the ball a little bit downfield more, just because that's what he does. He takes more shots than somebody like Josh Rosen. Deontay Johnson at 4,500 was somebody that was just brought up in chat, who's seen a good amount of volume, but it kind of fluctuates from week to week because I don't think that Mason Rudolph is ready to be a game-changing quarterback yet and really push the ball and do things like that. I'm not interested in Mecole Hardman at all. Doesn't play enough snaps, doesn't run enough routes. Looks really good when he has the ball in his hands, but he's not getting enough volume, in my opinion, to be somebody that we can hang our hat on with so many other guys in this range that are getting a lot of volume. So don't at me if Hardman just has a touchdown this week. Preston Williams on the same kind of flow as Parker, where he's getting a solid amount of targets every week and against the Jets secondary that really can't stop anything. So there's a lot of choices to be made. Oh yeah, and Cole Beasley, just because he's Cole Beasley. So there's a lot of choices to be made in that price range. So there's a lot of guys in play. You can definitely play. If you want to just say I'm playing 3 high price running backs because I don't believe in Jalen Samuels, I don't think that that's going to be where everybody's going. I don't think that's where the ownership's going to be. But you can definitely do it because there's 3 wide receivers between 4K and 5K just waiting for you. Cole, get a haircut and a real job, Beasley. You like Hardman for GPP? He's so fast. Okay, he is, but he's not on the field. So like, he would have to get you a 2 touchdown game on less than 20 snaps. That's not easy to do. Now, he might score 1 on special teams. He could return a punt, right? So like, the snaps that he plays do not include special team snaps. So that is what it is. Are the Redskins defense a real punt at 1,800? I think that most certainly they are, going up against the Bills. I like Josh Allen as a fantasy asset. I think that he's going to grow over the years as turning into a pretty good quarterback in the league. He's a dangerous quarterback, but he turns the ball over a lot and he takes a lot of sacks. And that's what we want out of a defense. Can't wait for Cole Beasley's diss track. I ain't dust. I mean, well, we had an NFL running back at Davis Maddock this week, so who's to say that we're not going to get an NFL wide receiver, tagging Adam Levitan. We had Troy Aikman have a full conversation with Evan Silva. I'm here for all of that, by the way. And while we're on that topic, don't at players. Okay? Just don't. Like, if they don't have a good day, I played you in fantasy this week and you sucked and you cost me money. So that's you, man. They're out there trying to do their job. They don't come to your job going, hey man, you didn't file that TPS report fast enough. I had you in my office fantasy league. I paid $8K for you on Office Kings. Just stop. You just ordered entirely too much sushi. That's not even a thing. There's no way to do that. I'm not saying that ordering sushi isn't a thing. I'm saying ordering too much sushi isn't a thing. There is no way you can order too much sushi. You love the mid-price wide receivers this week. Yeah, that's where most people are going to land. So guess what? You guys want to know how to be contrarian this week? You want to build a contrarian tournament lineup this week? Okay. Here's how we build a contrarian tournament lineup. Here. 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 Congratulations. You just built a contrarian lineup. It's not hard, guys. People put way too much thought into, like, into like, oh, see, well, I can do this. I can nobody's thinking of this. I'm going to do this whole thing. Think of the most common lineup builds that there are for a week based on the way that roster construction looks because of the salary breakdown. And then do it the other way. You don't need to galaxy brain this and play 40 chess in order to build a lineup that's going to have less than 100% owned in total when you add up all 9 positions. And you don't need a 1% guy at every position. And you can still play a chalk guy somewhere. McLovin says, I'm new to using an optimizer. If I don't have ownership projections, is that a huge deal? I don't think it's optimal. It should be an option in there. So like if you're using the Daily Roto engine and their optimizer over there, they have their ownership projections by Sunday morning and they're pretty solid, right? They're somewhat on point. They're within the realm. They're within a good range for every player. And you can set it to cap. I'm not concerned about an individual's ownership, right? This guy is 30% owned this week, so therefore I can't play him. I don't subscribe to that. I'm more about the total ownership of a lineup, right? So I don't want more than 130 combined ownership from every player from QB through defense when you add them all up. So based on their ownership projections that they have at Daily Roto, and there's a link down below in the comments section where you can click that and it'll take you to Daily Roto and get you 10% off at checkout if you use that link, or if you use promo code SmizLife at checkout. You can set the optimizer to have a maximum total ownership in any lineup that it builds. So I set mine at like 130. If you think, you know what, I want to have more of the chalk this week, set it for 145. If you want to build more contrarian lineups, set it at 100. And it'll build you lineups that don't add up to 100 total ownership. So like your QB, if he's 5% owned, if your running backs are going to be 30 and 28% owned, it adds all those up before it builds the lineups, and it won't build lineups above what you put it. Favorite cash QBs covered? I don't know. It's QB. Like I think that Derek Carr is fine this week. Somebody mentioned Rivers. I think Rivers and Trubisky are a little bit thin. I think that most people are going to land in that 6K range, as has been the norm this week or this year, right? That's usually where people are starting to sit. So like guys like Winston at 6,100 is fine. Darnold against Miami, right? Everybody against Miami. So Darnold at 5,900 I think is fine. Josh Allen at 6,500. Like I want him to be a guy that can get up to 30 fantasy points like we saw him for that 5-6 week stretch last year, but like he hasn't topped 22 fantasy points in any one game this year. That doesn't mean that he can't do it, but like there's been a few games where he had like 16, 18 points in the first half and then they just deflate it in the second half, right? So he's priced up at a point where if we sort by average fantasy points per game, right? And maybe he's priced up for the matchup. Average fantasy points per game. Kyle Allen, 12.8. Where'd he go? Josh Allen, 18.7, 6.5K. Jameis Winston, 6.1, averaging 3 more fantasy points a game. Same ceiling. Brissett, 19.5, 5.6. Wentz, 18.7, same fantasy points a game, 900 less. Rivers, 5.1, 1,400 less. Just because Josh Allen can run the ball and maybe it's a good matchup against Washington and maybe that's where the price up has come. But I don't think that's where the price up has come because he's been 6,500 for the past 2 weeks. And yeah, those were great matchups against Philly and Miami too. So we'll see next week if he's priced down at like mid fives where he probably should be based on his average points per game. I just think they're putting him up here because if they don't, everybody's going to jump on that Josh Allen train. So they're trying to manage the ownership a little bit with the salary. Just my opinion, because if he's 5,500, everybody's playing Josh Allen because he can break a slate and have 80 yards rushing with 2 touchdowns and a touchdown through the air with 200 yards passing and just give you 30 fantasy points for 5,600. So that's why I think that they're pricing him there because of the ceiling possibility and everybody's going to jump on him. On the topic of setting max ownership, if you say 140, if you hover over that box, it still says enter valid value. What? Is it still using 140? It's in the settings. So like I've got mine set for the main slate at like 130 or whatever. And it depends on what you want to have it at, right? So says please enter value. The two nearest values are 100 and 200. No, you can set it at that. It works. I hovered over the box. I've always had it there and it's never had a problem. But if you're a member at Daily Roto, they have a Slack chat. So I would ask in the Slack chat. I'm merely a user. I do not run the company at all. It's just a product that I use. Robbie Anderson for the win. Don't hate that for tournaments at all. Your best guess for percentage of players who do homework, read, listen, and watch versus those who don't. It's much higher than you think. Than the people who just play casually and don't. Football content is very hard to ignore. But a lot of people aren't grinding like you guys, right? If you're spending time watching YouTube videos, if you're spending time on Twitch here, 3, 4, 5 days a week, if you're participating in our Discord chat, if you're reading articles and listening to other podcasts that are focused on this and talking about daily fantasy, you're in like the top 5%. Do I review each and every lineup the optimizer gives me? No. I mean, I look at certain things, right? But I don't go through every single lineup and see if I like every single lineup, because I don't want to overrule what the optimizer is doing as long as the rules that I'm setting for it are coming out the way I want. So what I'll do is I'll run a set, and you guys know I run the optimizer like 50 times a week before I find the lineups that I want. So I'll have it build one vanilla for me with my vanilla settings that I have set. And then after that, I'll go through and I'll look at some percentages and I'll say, well, this guy is way too highly owned, or there's too many players. I need to pare down the player pool because I like a smaller player pool than other people. I like to focus on a very tight group of players as opposed to having like 80 or 100 players over my 150 lineups. I'd rather have 55 to 65 and hit those guys hard. I'll check quarterbacks. I'll check my quarterback groups. So I'll go through and say I have like a Russ Wilson group this week. So I'll click Russ Wilson and I'll see, is there a good spread of the wide receivers that I've grouped with Russell Wilson and the bring back guys, or is it just giving me one guy in every lineup? Because I definitely don't want that. I want some to have two. I want some to have one. I want like if you're bringing it back with receivers on Tampa Bay, is it only bringing it back with Godwin, or is it only bringing it back with Brait? Because I don't want that either. I want a spread of guys and mix of guys through those lineups that I have with Russ Wilson. So like I look at it in a macro sense more than a micro sense. People don't really move the number, Donkey. They don't. Everybody thinks like if Al mentions a player, right? Oh yeah, there's gonna be somebody in the comments on YouTube, I guarantee you. Oh, I wish you hadn't mentioned Jaylen Samuels. Come on. I'm not moving the number because I put Jaylen Samuels on a video or talk about him on stream. That's not going to move the number on Jaylen Samuels, right? Everybody is going to be talking about him. Every show is going to mention him. Twitter is going to talk about him. Fantasy Football Now on ESPN is going to talk about him. So like, I'm never moving the number on anybody. I remember a couple of years ago when I talked on the Daily Fantasy Edge, which at the time had a lot of downloads a week. We still get a lot of downloads a week, but like this was when we were like way up there. We were getting a ton of downloads on that podcast every single week. And I said, JJ Nelson is way too cheap. And I think he's in play at minimum salary. He was $3K that week. I said, there's nobody else there. He should get 6 to 10 targets. And against a team that can't, whatever. It was everything lined up. He ended up having like 27 DraftKings points that day. He was like 1% owned. I did not move the needle at all. Right. And I'm still not personally moving the needle at all. I was going to do this meme on Twitter with like, that if I told you the picture of the iceberg, you guys would know what I'm talking about. The stereo, like the one that pops in your mind. So like there's a picture of the ocean and you can see under the water and you can see above the water. So like there's that little triangle above the water and then there's this massive thing below the water, right? The iceberg picture. So I was going to tag that and say, DFS Twitter bubble above the water, and then underneath everyone else who plays DFS that you don't know about, right? So the DFS Twitter bubble, the YouTube DFS bubble, the people that watch on Twitch, there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that play daily fantasy, if not millions of people that play daily fantasy. And like, this video on YouTube is going to get like 15 to 20,000 views. Some people are going to watch it multiple times just based on the analytics. That's right. I ain't moving the needle, guys. It's not happening. Al mentioned a guy who's going to go from 5% to 20% owned. Nope. Not happening at all. Curtis Samuel practicing full Thursday, but sat today. May have aggravated his shoulder. Okay, well, we'll monitor that. That's why we do the Sunday show. That's exactly why I said what I said before about, you know, you have to be a little bit nimble. You don't have to be as nimble in daily fantasy NFL that you do in NBA, but you do have to be willing to be nimble. Yeah, if Samuel is out, it's a DJ Moore is 600 more. People need to take responsibility for their choices, including their DFS lineup. Well, yeah, but that's a different topic. Like, I think that people that aren't involved in, like, you know, the daily fantasy Twitter aspect of this world, I still think they do some work, but I think they play hunches and guys that they like and players that are on their fantasy teams. I got a friend of mine on my fantasy, or not my fantasy, my softball team who plays fantasy football. And he was telling me a couple weeks ago that he had both Buffalo running backs. He had Singletary and Gore, and they were playing Miami. He's like, I'm just going to start both of them this week. I said, don't do that. But why? Miami's so terrible. Please don't do that. That's 90% of the people playing daily fantasy. It's not a donkey question at all, dude. There's nothing wrong with that question. Thoughts on Landry value this week? I think he's fine. I think there's a lot of plays in that 4K to 5K range at wide receiver, and I think that Landry's one of the better ones, to be very honest with you. Hess said, you got the shirt the other day, looks fresh. Thank you again. No problem, man. We do giveaways every single Monday on stream. If you join us on twitch.tv/Al_Smizzle, there's a link in the description down below. Sunday morning, 45 minutes before lock, there's ways that you guys can earn wheel spins that I spin on Monday, and then we play marbles to, we have a marble race with all the subscribers that are in chat to do giveaways. Cash via PayPal, free subs for the non-subs, money donated to charity, or t-shirts, ! Shirt in the chat, please. If you want to go check out one of the shirts, it's over at rotoware.com in the Al Smizzle collection. And we give those things away on Monday, but y'all guys got to contribute on Sunday to earn the giveaways on Monday. Smokey Brown viable in cash this week. I think he's more of a tournament play. So I think Singletary's a nice tournament play at 4,700. Yeah, I'm okay with him. As a tournament play, I'm very okay with him. How is he risky? So you're talking about Smokey Brown, right? So like, he's risky because of the price and what he's going to cost you. He's not risky because he's a bad player, right? He's not risky because of him. He's risky because if you roster him, come on, if you roster him, you're costing yourself somebody else. So like, if you roster him at 6,100, what is it costing you at running back? Okay, we talked about this, right? So this is what I think is going to be kind of chalk. Just like last week, right? Where there were 3 dudes who everybody had in their cash game lineup at running back. I think that these are going to be the 3 dudes this week. If everything kind of shakes out the way it seems it's going to shake out, I think these 3 cats are going to be in like 80% of cash games. Well, no, not 80, 40%. Like 2 or 3 of those guys in 40% of cash games. So now you have 4,700. Let's just plug a random defense in here. Like, even if you come all the way down to the Redskins, right? Give yourself the maximum amount of money. Tight end is probably going to be one of the 3K guys. And then 5,900 to spend. Okay. So we talked about Landry. Like, the lineup kind of builds itself, right? We talked about Landry or one of those 4K guys in here. I don't care which one it is. They're all within 100 or 200 of each other. 6,400. Where are you going to pay at quarterback? Right? At wide receiver, I think the most owned wide receiver is probably going to be somebody like Godwin or somebody like Lockett. right? At the high price. I don't think it's going to be Galladay. I don't think it's going to be Diggs. Lock it against the Bucks or Godwin here. They're close enough. That leaves you 6,000. Where are you paying at quarterback? And that's with the Redskins defense, right? So like, what else are you costing yourself by going for him? Are you not playing Juju Smith-Schuster? Are you playing him over Juju? Are you playing him over DK Metcalf to bring that lineup back? So you're going to end up costing yourself something, which is why most people think that he's a tournament play this week, right? And I'm the biggest cheerleader for Smokey Brown this entire season. So that's why I think that's kind of a chalk lineup build for this week. And that's why I think it's tough. Right? Tanner Hudson's season is coming. I mean, they said that OJ Howard's the only guy that's going to be out. So that means that Brait plays. So that means that Tanner might not. Thoughts on Keenan Allen? I haven't really thought about him this week, like at all, really. His volume's been good the last 2 weeks with 10 and 11 targets. No touchdowns for a while. He just kind of does what he does. Right? He doesn't catch long passes. He doesn't get down the field. They utilize other guys to do that. He's the possession guy, which can pay off, but he's got to score touchdowns. Right? When you're the possession guy, you have to score touchdowns, and he's just not. He hasn't been really utilized that way since early in the season when everybody was injured. Now that they have Henry back and they have Mike Williams there, they're soaking up all that end zone usage. Right? And Austin Eckler is soaking up some of that short yardage red zone usage that that Keenan Allen also usually sees. So he's fighting a lot of people, and when they get really close, now they just give it to Melvin Gordon. So like, there's 5 dudes, and it's tough to fight 5 guys. It's tough to feed 5 people around the end zone. My nose is stuffed today, guys. I can barely breathe. How much do I think the Denver QB hurt Sutton? I don't know yet. I don't know about the Allen situation. All I know is that he's got a bad haircut. Not a fan of the haircut. Here's a question. Do you have the testicular fortitude to play Ryan Fitzpatrick this week in tournament lineups? Can you do that? He's 4,800. Sure. Chat. Yeah, sure. Like, do you have it in you to play this? Where's Allen? A lot of Allens this week at QB. Allen. Allen. It's a terrible haircut. Like, this is bad. You got to do something. You're a starting quarterback in the NFL right now. You got to do something about this. That's not acceptable. Old picture. Don't care. He was wearing an NFL uniform in that picture. Hairline is on point. I don't know, man. If he cuts that little coif, that might be a 5 head. Short everywhere except the bangs, right? That's what I'm saying. Stack Brandon Allen and jam in Allen and Fant and jam in all the dudes. I'm sure people are going to do that in tournaments. I'm sure that is a tournament route that people are going to take. 7,100 on a quarterback pass catcher stack, and just slam in all 3 expensive running backs, and you'll still have enough money for wide receivers that are in plus matchups. I'm 100% sure that's going to happen. What is a quaff? Google's a thing. Derek Carr naked this week for GPP just to save money. I think it's possible, but I think you probably want to pair him with somebody Look, he's got multiple touchdowns in 4 of the last 5 weeks. And all of his touchdowns are going to like 2.5 guys, right? His touchdowns are going to go to Terrell Williams. His touchdown passes are going to go to Darren Waller. And the one guy that you're not going to play with him is the island of Foster Moreau. It's the only guy you're not playing with him. So 2.5 guys are catching touchdowns. Has Carr thrown for over 300 yards yet this year? No, I don't think he has. He's had some 260s and 280s, but he's 5,500. You don't need all that much from him. You don't need a 300-yard day. You're Renfro. Yikes. See, and everybody's comparing Renfro to Amendola, and they're different wide receivers, and they're also being utilized differently. Thoughts on Chargers running backs? It's gross, but a good matchup. I can't play them. If I was going to play one of them, it would be Eckler, but there's no way I'm playing Melvin Gordon. Thoughts on Eckler? He's a baller. You know, he's an absolute baller who's not getting any touches. Remember we talked about this when Melvin Gordon came back, and I said, okay, the floor for him is what he did last year, which is like, 10 to 12 touches a game. And he's been there except for 2 of the last 3 weeks when he got 5 and 8. Right? He kind of sat in that range when Melvin Gordon came back. The first game where he had a metric ton of catches against Denver. But like, this is the usage that we need. And the only way we get this usage is if MG3 isn't on the field. But they are committed to keeping MG3 on the field, which is going to keep Austin Eckler probably out of my lineups. Do I think there's enough volume in the Minnesota passing game to take that route over Cook in turn? Take what route? Take the passing game route? Well, we need to know Thielen's status. Practicing Friday with a sleeve over his right leg. I mean, in tournaments, if you want to go with him, yeah, it's a leverage play if you're going to try and play a Thielen Cousins stack or a Diggs Cousins stack, because I think that Cook's going to carry massive ownership this week, and for good reason. He's earned it, right? He's been one of the most steady running backs in the league. He has been everything that like we wanted Saquon Barkley to be this season, right? Dalvin Cook's been that guy. Would have been easier if MG3 had been traded. Oh yeah, for sure. That would have been a dream situation for everybody involved. Would have loved that. Thoughts on Matt Moore? Great offense with great offensive mind at home. Vikings season brutal on the road. Yeah, I wrote him up in Best Buys this week. So I think he's in play. I like the way that they're utilizing him. They're not trying to make him jump in there and be Patrick Mahomes and do Patrick Mahomes things. They're throwing the ball a lot shorter with him. They're getting the ball in the hands of the receivers, who are one of the best teams in the league at yards after the reception. And it's a good matchup for his skill set, because Minnesota is one of the worst teams at completion percentage on balls thrown less than 15 yards. So their whole defense is built on don't get beat deep, which against the speed that they're facing with Kansas City, I assume they're still going to take that philosophy regardless of who's at quarterback, because Matt Moore can still throw it behind you if you let somebody get behind you. He's just not going to challenge as much unless it's an obvious situation as Mahomes will. So they're going to let his guys get the ball underneath. So he's going to have some receptions, and they do a great job of getting the ball to the receivers on jet sweeps where it's just that touch pass, snap it and touch it, and he gets all those reception yards. Like the 1 play or 2 plays that Hardman got last week, where like he catches it, essentially it's a handoff, but because he pops it up in the air and Hardman grabs it, it's a pass, and he gets 10-yard reception on that. Give me all the touch passes to Hardman. Well, he might get 1 or 2. Ask Kenny Stills if Moore can throw deep. Moore at this point isn't a guy that's going to... There's a difference between, can he throw deep to an open wide receiver, or is he going to challenge you deep when there's still a safety there, when it's not an obvious situation? Like Mahomes is just going to fling it, right? He's like, my guy is going to make this catch. I'm going to throw it deep. Where Matt Moore is like, we're going to run this play. We're going to set him up. And then all of a sudden, this is the spot. And now we can go deep. And if you see this from the safety on this play action, then take the shot, right? But he's not going to do that unless he's the Lorax of throwing deep. That's kind of the situation with him. I think that's going to do it. We got a shorter slate this week, so there's going to be a little bit less questions as we go. Things do look kind of straightforward, at least where we sit on Friday. Watch the injury news from the practice reports that come out from today's games. I'll be live hopefully Sunday morning, unless there's a situation. I got a family thing that I might have to do on Sunday morning. I think I can handle it. We'll be live on Twitch 45 minutes before lock, unless I report to you guys otherwise on Twitter. 45 minutes before lock, right up until kickoff on Twitch. Link down below. Hopefully I'll see you guys there. You guys can earn some wheel spins for the giveaways on Monday. Until then, catch you guys later. Bye.
He's a legend.